There's a quote in the book that says, like, there's so much more freedom in not knowing. That is what Happily Gray is all about. The thrill of uncertainty. A lot of people don't feel a thrill about uncertainty.
I know, and that is what that experience of being a critical care nurse taught me, and like let me be more comfortable with and really lean into of leaning into that vulnerability and just trust in you and the path and a bigger picture. It sounds kind of willy-nilly, but I felt that so deeply.
Yeah.
It's not always black and white, and there's not always going to be an answer, and sometimes that's a really good thing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Living Fully podcast. I'm thrilled today because I always love bringing on a friend who is also a great mother, a wise business person, and someone who has been through a big life shift or transition and had the courage to pivot and built something really amazing from taking that leap of faith. And that person is Mary Lawless Lee. You guys may know her on Instagram as Happily Gray. And she's actually been in the space longer than I have. So we are about to have a really amazing conversation today on all things business and motherhood and friendship. And I'm so excited to bring Mary on the podcast today. So without further ado, Mary Lawless Lee. I'm so excited to have Mary in my office today because I really love it when I get to have my friends on my podcast.
I know, we're just chatting. I'm so happy to be here.
We had to stop talking because we were talking about everything that we need to talk about on the podcast. Just blah, blah, blah.
That's how it always is with us, though.
I know it is. When we sit by each other at events, it's just like, we're not listening to the speaker talk. Me and Mary are just like, blah, blah, blah.
Life, business, all the things.
I know, because there's so much going on. Always. I said on the last podcast, they were like, how do you do it all with all the irons in the fire? I was like, well, I need to get in the iron manufacturing business because I don't see how that changes. There's a lot of irons in the fire.
I know.
And you have them too.
Yeah. I mean, 3 kids, another 4th one is a business. And just, I mean, it's full. Life is full right now, and it's non-stop.
Yeah.
Like trying to keep my sanity through it all.
And we do it to ourselves, because we keep having the babies and we keep growing the businesses, and it's like all good stuff, but it does take balance, and it does take like us keeping our feet on the ground. And like, that's what I'm excited to talk to you about today, because I honestly think, Mary, you've been doing it longer than I have. And I'm just excited to talk about that and the transition and then the businesses that you built from it and then how it shifted with having kids and all the things that you've gone through along the way.
Many seasons and a lot learned and still learning. Still
Still
trying to figure
today.
it out. Which that's why every time I see you, I'm like, here's like 50 questions.
I know. And I ask you 50 questions.
Because I don't understand. How are you doing this?
This is, I wish you guys could be privy to these conversations, but today you get to be privy to one. So I start out every podcast. This is the Living Fully podcast. And I start out every podcast this season asking who in your life helps you live most fully and why?
Oh, I love that. Probably my husband, because he holds me the most accountable. And, like what we were just saying, that doesn't always look like, pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
And he's always my accountability of like, but really, like, what are those long-term goals? Is this really a part of that?
That is a gift.
He makes me really evaluate and discern like how I'm spending my time. And I'm always one of those people that I'm like, yes, let's do it. And I get excited. But at the end of the day, if there's nothing left, then, what are you doing it for? And he's my, he really like checks me, which is good.
Madison. Everybody loves Madison. I also love that you met and got married in 7 months because
so fast.
I love those stories, and I love it when it works out because it's like working out. I've been around you and Madison, and I think you guys are in it for the long haul.
We are in it.
You're a good match.
Well,
sure.
It took some time. I mean, I went through a divorce at 22.
Yes.
And I mean, there's been so many lessons learned to get, when I met him, I just knew there was like this gut heart. I knew. And within 3 months, we both had kind of vocalized that to each other. And then we got married within 7 months. But I think like going through, that lesson so young, that really helped just give me the perspective of like, what am I looking for, and who do I want to build a life with? Because it's not all about the love, because we both know that's out the door very quickly.
That's really true.
Yeah, it's who you can do life with and raise kids with, and that's another level of commitment and trust and respect.
Okay, I love that answer. And I love like talking about discernment and trust and like all the words that you just said in there. I'm skipping forward to this question because it's really important, because a lot of people that see you online right now, they see all of the beautiful life that you're living and all the beautiful photography and the high fashion and the Milan Fashion Week and New York Fashion Week. And she's at the Dior show, and then she's at the, she's everywhere.
Oh, it's not that glamorous.
She's everywhere, okay? And a lot of people might think like, wow, what fashion institute did you go to? Or what, was your mom into fashion? Or like, they think that you came from that world to achieve and get that far in that world, but you were an ICU nurse.
So starkly different.
And I want to talk a little bit about that, because you were an ICU nurse living in a totally different, you're in Texas, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Married to a surgeon who is very black and white thinking, I want my surgeon to be black and white thinking. Right. I don't want him to be thinking gray. I need him to know the black and the white.
Know what he's doing.
For good reason, So you were working as an ICU nurse and spending time on these floors where people are like between life and death, and like I think nurses and teachers are the angels on earth.
Truly.
Truly. And here is the piece. I want you to talk a little bit about that, but the piece of the story that is so inspiring to me and something that I know that people can gain from today on this podcast is like, you started to feel this like tug on yourself to do something different, and you wanted to start this blog, which is like such a it's a 180. What gave you the courage to, what did that tug even look like to make that shift? Because here you are now. So clearly you made it really well.
Well, I mean, it does feel like, what I did back then and now, world's different. But, in a lot of ways, I've always had a creative side to me, but it was no denying. When I was a kid, I used to say, I want to be a nurse. I want to take care of people. I have that big side of my heart. And I think it's important. And what I stepped into is realizing you don't have to be one way. There can be multiple different paths. And when I was a nurse, I was working 3 days a week. You work 3 days a week, 12 to 14 hour shifts. I was working at night. And I would come home and write. Writing's always been a passion of mine, and I love fashion. So my mom wasn't in fashion, and she wouldn't be bothered by me saying that. She's not like a big fashion woman. But my grandmother was, and my older sister was, and I was always drawn to it. And so I found myself as a release and as a way to kind of come down off of being in the ICU and these intense shifts. An experience and a time in my life that I value the most is those nights, getting to work with those people and being so close to life or death. And that's actually the name Happily Gray was inspired by the experience of nursing, because what those nights taught me is life is not black or white.
Yeah.
It's not simple. There are not simple answers to everything. And I found myself living in this gray space. And then I would come home from that, and in a way it felt creative to me. And so I started to write about it. And that kind of journey of kind of debriefing from those intense shifts through writing evolved into a creative outlet. And I started writing, okay, what do I like to write about? What takes me totally, out of body and just kind of turns my head off? And that was fashion. And that was like, and not just fashion, but fabrics and colors and textures and leaning into arts, because everything kind of, in a way, inspires each other. And so that's when I paid my friend $50 to start Happily Gray. But Happily Gray that name was inspired because of me just realizing the gray space in life. And I grew up in a small town, and it was, somewhat presented as black or white. And I am so thankful for the morals and values and what my parents instilled in me. But in a small town, it's inevitable. It's a bit of a bubble. And so
I grew up in the same situation.
Realizing the world's much bigger and just the perspective and just the respect of all different types of journeys is really what inspired that Happily Gray, the gray space. And so that turned into like the creative outlet of fashion. And believe me, no one knew what a blog was. Instagram and Pinterest hadn't even launched.
So when was this? What year was
this?
this?
13 years ago.
Oh
maybe
my
even 14
gosh.
years ago.
Yeah, you beat me.
I mean, it was forever ago. And I mean, I paid my friend $50 and everyone thought I was crazy, but I wasn't advertising it. There was no pictures of me. It was just me writing about fashion and what I liked. And so then but with the launch of Instagram and Pinterest, I learned like, oh man, okay, you have to have a picture. And so I was taking pictures of other people. And then I realized, okay, I need to take pictures of my outfits. And so I was so uncomfortable with the idea of being in front of a camera that I would, every shot of me the first 4 years, my head is turned and I have on sunglasses.
Yes.
And I got the nickname as Messy Bun because I always had a bun in the back, and I was called Messy Bun because I never would show my face because I hated that aspect of it, but it was important. And now, I mean, several many years past, it's like that's how you connect is really, but it was that career shift was never really intentional, but it came to a point of me realizing like, oh, there is something here, and trusting my gut, and just like letting that passion lead, letting that courage propel me forward. But it definitely wasn't easy. And I can tell you, I had a lot of people that looked at me like, including my parents who paid for college, were like, what are you doing? And even when I was, making more than what nurses should make, well above, my dad still looked at me like I was crazy. So it wasn't an easy leap, but it kind of, was clear to me to go for it and, to follow that.
For sure. There's a quote in the book that says, like, there's so much more freedom in not knowing. That is what Happily Gray is all about. It's a return to wonder, to joy, and to the thrill of uncertainty. The thrill of uncertainty. A lot of people don't feel a thrill about uncertainty.
I know, and that is what that experience of being a critical care nurse taught me, and like let me be more comfortable with and really lean into of leaning into that vulnerability and just trust in and you and the path and a bigger picture. It sounds kind of willy-nilly, but I felt that so deeply through working in the ICU and learning that it's not always black or white, and there's not always going to be an answer. And sometimes that's a really good thing. And we don't know what our path holds, but we can do a lot to, manifest and try at the end of the day.
I wonder if the closeness to life and death inspired you to just be like, I do not even care. Like, I'm going for this. I think that so many times in our lives when we are like faced with something that is so grave in our own lives, it makes us be like, I ain't living this way. Like, totally. I'm changing my life because life is so short. And I'm like, I wonder if that helped facilitate that leap for you, because so many people don't take the leap. And I want to shake people. And that's what we talk about on the podcast all the time, because I'm like, this is your only life.
It's too fleeting. Absolutely. That was like the backbone and catalyst of me realizing, because every shift, there were those moments of realizing how short it is. And I mean, gosh, I remember my grandfather as he was dying, his last words were, it's too short. Like, you really have to go after what you want. And it's just, I think at that point that made me not feel so precious about it, and to just go for it and have that like gumption and grit. I always say, like, nursing, it taught me the deepest sense of gratitude and grit. Like, so much. It was such a humbling journey, but then it also really made me like just really inspired to just go after exactly what it is that I wanted. And I just kept having fun in that, and it kept growing. And then there was social platforms that really propelled it, and honestly the timing, luck, and just a creative outlet just kind of propelled that path forward. But you're absolutely right. That definitely gave me the perspective of, I remember talking to my mom after shifts, almost after every shift, to telling her, like, I just can't believe how short. And I had patients that passed at 40, at 60, sometimes at 85, but even just the young ones, it really, really puts it in perspective for you.
And to not be, I like what you just said, don't be so precious about it. Like, just go. Like, get that grit, and that, like, you can do it. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but like, you can make that leap. And so as you started growing, the social media apps you just said the word luck, the luck of that Pinterest emerges, and then that Instagram emerges. And I started, maybe 10 or 8 to 10 years ago, like depending on what you call a start, and blogs were big, but like Instagram was not really a thing that much yet. And it's so intimidating. And here's what I think: a lot of people that want to get into this space, they're extremely intimidated by the pressure that they put on themselves to show up the way that they think they have to show up on these apps. And we almost were blessed in a way that the apps were new, because we didn't have to really like get perfect, because Instagram in the beginning was like, you couldn't even put a picture from your camera roll on Instagram. You really had to take it to the phone.
It was a free-for-all. Yes.
There was no like
pre-editing, pre-shooting. You took it in the app.
Lark and Valencia and black and white.
Yeah. And everyone's kind of looked the same.
Everyone's looked the same. And like food pictures were really big, and that was really easy to take. And like, so,
Flat lays.
Flat lays. I got a piece of marble from Home Depot because my place that I was living looked just terrible. And I got a piece of marble so I could do my flat lays.
Literally did the same thing. Mine was a giant oversized cutting board that I got from Williams Sonoma. And that's where I would arrange, like, for 45 minutes, I'd be doing flat lay photos. Long live those days.
Long live. Don't you wish we could go back to the flat lays? Then we had to get the DSLRs out. So I can remember when I started, because like you and I have known each other for a long time, but 10 years ago, you were doing really well. You and Cassie Kelly, who is our mutual friend, who had a blog called Womanista. So Happily Gray and Womanista were like my ideals. And I can remember like all I would wear was cowboy boots. And one of my friends who I was borrowing her clothes because I couldn't afford to get the clothes, she was like, you got to stop wearing those cowboy boots. And I was like, you think? She's like, yeah. Did you see Happily Gray and Womanista wearing cowboy boots with every outfit? And I was like, you're right.
Oh my gosh.
So I sold all my cowboy boots.
No, you have to just be whoever it is and whatever.
I learned that.
Yeah. You have to lean into whatever it is that is you.
You do. And the authenticity piece is something that you learn. And gosh, I hate it. And like now, authenticity is overused, and the phrase authenticity is overused is also overused. So I think that showing up as who you are, it's going to go so much further on these apps.
Truly.
And so I admire your authenticity, and that you showed the front of your face, finally took your dang sunglasses off and pulled your hair down and let us see your face because it's pretty.
6 years.
Took 6 years, but she's here. Okay. And I admire that. But what I really admire is something that you and I share this in common, in that we revealed a really deep secret in our books. So in your Happily Gray book, you talked about something that I'd never heard you share. So maybe if you did share it, I missed it, but I had never shared that I spent 6 months in a treatment program. You had never shared that you had dealt with a lifelong battle with an eating disorder, with disordered eating.
Yeah.
I didn't know that until I read your book.
That was the first time I had shared it. And in fact, I wrote 75% of the book and did not share it. And I got done. No, actually, I wrote the entire book because I finished it at Thanksgiving. And I told my publisher, give me like 3 weeks. Let me take 3 weeks off. And then I'll come back and read this after Thanksgiving. And I read the book, and I remember just like sobbing. And it was, I knew in my heart that I couldn't write this book and put this book out there without, it was missing the biggest story, a full chapter dedicated to this journey that really has made me and has been one of the most important things I have been through to date. And also like the accountability. I preach authenticity, and I preach like leaning into the vulnerability, and that's such a big part of my brand Nēmah now. And I wasn't able to do that. And so there's a accountability piece there. And just like, I went back to my publisher, and I actually didn't even tell them that I was doing it. I wrote the chapter within 2 weeks, and I turned it into them before Christmas. And I said, hey, this has to be in it. I know we're printing in a month, but this has to be in it. The book's not complete without it. And it's chapter 2. And it's the most important piece. And it's actually the piece that more women have connected with that. And I have found that connection and community and strength in not only sharing, but also like what has come of that.
Yeah.
And you know this all too well. It's about, at the end of the day, I think if we don't have community, why are we doing this? And that, that piece and opening up and telling that story and what I've learned from it was the best thing, the best decision I've ever made. And just also gave me more strength, and because you're not cured. You don't just get over an eating disorder. It's a lifelong journey of learning and twists and turns and ups and downs. And that's why we need that community. Yeah. So it's so important.
Yeah. I admire you for putting that in there. And I know how hard that is. So I knew in my book that I was going to put the recovery piece in there, but they kept wanting me to go deeper into it. They're like, you can't just like scratch the surface and be like, oh yeah, by the way, I spent 6 months in treatment, but here's the happy life on the other side. Yeah. They were like, you have to explain how you got there. And I didn't want to. And I think part of that was innate in me, that I just didn't want to, I don't know. It just felt, I was like, I don't want to relive it. But I will say that just like you, it's the part that people have connected to the most. And even people that don't have an issue with drugs or alcohol, but people that have emotional issues or have a spouse that has issues with recovery. Or I spent almost 6 months in this treatment center, and I spent a lot of time with people with disordered eating. And I can remember, I will never forget this day, that like there was a girl that came in that, had an eating disorder, and I was like, oh, she won't have to spend as much time as we will here, because it seems like that would be an easier thing to get past, because obviously I'd never dealt with it before, and so I didn't know. And one of our counselors was like, this is actually the hardest thing to heal from, because she said, all of you guys can go and put your monsters in the backyard and bury them in a grave, but she has to take her monster, put it in the closet, and 3 times a day hold hands with that monster and bring it to the dinner table with her and eat. And it's like you just said a while ago, it's legal at the grocery store, food is.
I know.
And you have to sit down with people at a table in every single social event, and your drug of choice is sitting right there on a plate in front of you.
It's so interesting that you just said monster, because when I started therapy, or a few years into therapy, one of the therapists that I worked with, she was calling it monster. And I told her, I was like, hey, we got to stop calling it monster, because even though this kind of is a monster in my life, I got to kind of be friends in a way. Like, we're together. Yeah. And so, like, we've got to figure out how to operate together. But you're right. It is something that you have to, it's a really hard journey. And the secrecy and shame can eat you alive. And it wasn't until I had one woman in my life that held up their hand that said, oh no, I've been there, without her knowing that I was there. That was the change in the path for me, and of just having one other woman hold up their hand, and how powerful that was, because it is so rooted in secrecy and shame. And you go from anorexia to bulimia to binging. There's so many different phases of it, and it's also just, I think women feel like it's messy. They don't want to talk about it. And it's just so, what I learned, how much it was rooted to control in my life. Yeah. And then I learned what that control was about. You really have to, it's a hard journey, because it's rarely about food. It's rarely about body image. It's so much more about control, and then how that developed in whatever year or phase of your life. And for me, that was childhood. And so you're never fully healed. I say this in my book. It is a lifelong journey. And if we can share about that and lean into that, it is scary. It's terrifying. And that's why I wrote the entire book without including it. But that also was just that lady I'm talking about. She was looking me in the eyes. Like, after I read the entire book, seeing her face in my mind of just, I did that for you, like stand up for other women. And that, it's just been the best thing, the most powerful thing for me in my healing journey too. Yeah. Like,
and I'm sure you're that woman for so many other people.
I've had the best conversations off of it, face to face, in DMs and emails and text, people that I had no idea were struggling, that it's a relief. It's just a relief when you find out you're not the only one, right? Like, it's a relief when you talk about mom stuff and mom guilt and all of community.
It's also, though, like, you have a daughter. You have a daughter and 2 sons. I now have a daughter. Our orders are reversed, but like Navy, I'm sure that piece of it as well, like you standing up and being like, this is going on with me. Like, what a powerful thing is of an example for a little girl that you're raising in your home.
Truly. How am I going to ever talk to her about it or ever be there to support her if she was to go through this, if I haven't actually been honest? And the big piece of that is accountability and honesty.
Yeah.
That's really where it starts, is getting honest. And you don't have to get honest with 50 people. It's one person.
Yeah.
There's one person in your life that you can be honest with that can also then hold you accountable.
Yeah.
And that's why group therapy is so important with this sort of addiction.
Yes.
It's not just singular one-on-one therapy. Group therapy is so, and that was one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life, is walk in a room. I was in college. I was in Austin, UT Austin, walking into a room. My parents didn't even know, but walking into a room with 15 other women that I was terrified. In the first probably 10 meetings, I didn't say a word.
Yeah.
It's just, but like slowly, that is also what softens and allows you to really step into that vulnerability. But it's a tough journey, and it takes time.
Yeah.
But to your point, like the accountability piece today is having a daughter.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? Have you ever read the book to your kids? Like, that's not my monster.
No.
Oh, you need to get that
No.
book. So the whole book is about that he has a monster that sleeps under his bed, but they're friends. And so the whole book is like, they show different monsters, and he says, that's not my monster. Like, it's got its claws and its teeth, and nothing's right on it. And then at the end, he says, that's my monster. And he's like, no, I can go to sleep because it's like a nice monster. It's part of his life. It sleeps under his bed. You need to get that. That'll be an emotional book for you to read.
Yeah, I'll be sobbing while
yeah, they're going to be like, Mom, what's with you in this monster book? Oh my gosh. Yeah, the control piece is an interesting piece for me, because I think that with addiction, with my form of addiction, perfectionism and the need to please people was so big for me. Not as much control, but I hear that over and over, the control piece. I remember watching like all these Princess Diana documentaries, and they talk so much about her when she finally came out with this, that she had an eating disorder, and people were like shocked. And she always said in like her writings and stuff about control. Like, I feel like it was the only thing she felt like she could control, the control piece. It's very
That's why I say a lot of times it's not really centered around food. For me, it was just a chaotic environment at a young age.
Yeah.
And that was the piece the only piece that I could control in that moment.
Yeah.
And then it starts to warp and take grip, and before you know it, you're 10 feet under. And so
And it started in high school, because you dealt with it first in high school and then in college. And then, so it's like it rears its head over and over.
And that's why I say there's different phases of healing. And if it's about connection and opening up. And if you can connect with other women, and it's not like you have to talk about it on social media, camera to face to camera.
Yeah.
Like, there's all different forms of vulnerability. Yeah. And I remind myself of that a lot, of like, we don't have to spill every bit and piece of our life on social media.
I feel like,
but like there's ways to connect that you can. We have a 24-hour rule in our house. I don't know if y'all do anything like this, but I started this about probably 2 years ago. It was a few years into marriage with Madison, where he was just like, I told you, he's my person who holds me accountable. The best thing that's ever happened to me. And if anything big or little happens in our life, we wait 24 hours to share it on social media.
That's a great rule.
And it's been huge because it allows you, whether it's good or bad, it allows you to validate and to just experience that as a person or as a family before you seek that validation. Because what I was finding as I was seeking that validation of my online community, which I mean, I love getting to call this a job and having this online community. And so it's tempting, and it's hard not to immediately just want to go, know? But I kind of was losing that touch of like myself and my family. And that's helped us tremendously. Yeah. That's a great rule of sharing that piece, whether it's a high, whether it's a low.
Kyle does that with me too. How do you choose what to share publicly versus privately? Like, do you keep some things private? Because I don't.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's really hard.
Unfortunately.
Because I think it's hard to be on camera and to act like nothing's wrong when something's wrong, I think it's really difficult.
That's well said.
How can you be authentic and actually, seem real if it's not? I struggle with that. And again, that kind of comes down to like like I said, like 24 hours, or just like a conversation with Matt and I, because some stuff is vulnerable because they don't want to be, my husband doesn't want to be on social media. And so there's a bit of a push and pull there of a balance of, you know, what we won't.
Yeah.
It's always a conversation with him.
That's great advice. Okay, going into balance. I heard on Off the Vine, you were talking to Caitlin, another mutual friend, that you said that 2 weeks after you had your baby, you had all 6 of your employees in your house working. I mean, I was like, oh gosh, is that bad to do? Because I did the same thing after every single baby. And you know, balance does not become imperative, I feel like, until you have children. It's always important. It's always important. I shouldn't say that. But it becomes more important because there's other people involved when you have a family. And you have, you know, your brand, which is very big, and you've been at 1 million followers, I feel like, for longer than any of us have.
No, I just hit 1 million.
Yeah, but you had hit 1 million, I feel like, before. You seem like you've
grew,
always been at 1 million.
I grew. That's what people keep telling me, and I'm like, damn, I shouldn't have promoted all this 1 million. It feels like a big milestone for me, but that so many people have said that. But we grew quickly early on, and then it's just hard to grow. It's hard to grow. And so that was yesterday, or about a week ago.
Yeah, well, congrats for getting there again. But I mean, there has to be like something with balance that you have mastered to be able to do it all, because, and we'll talk about Nēmah in a little bit, but like you also had the Happily Gray store, which my outfit that I'm wearing, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, you'll see my outfit that I have on right now. I bought this at Nēmah, or at Happily Gray at the store that was in L&L Marketplace, that you had to be like, y'all, I don't have time to run this store too, because Nēmah was getting too big and everything else, you know, and I admire you for taking that, because it's sometimes hard for us to shut the door on things. So how do you balance it all?
Help, support systems, which I still to this day don't know how you don't have more around you, but I mean,
we're working on it.
The first thing is a good group of people around you, and there's no one that enables me more than someone that helps us with childcare. We have a great person that helps with childcare, and that is the peace of mind to really free my mind to be able to do my job. But then I have a great team. I think you're only as good as the people around you, and I'm learning that. Like I'm learning that so deeply and building Nēmah. There's in building a business from the ground up, there's finance, there's operations, there's management, there's research and development. There's so many different aspects to this business that really, as an operator, your job, once it gets to a certain level, is to put the right people in place. And
that are smarter and better than you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't be the expert at all those things. You can kind of be until, you know, you get to that point. But once you're at that point, your job and the success of your company is about who you put. Yeah. Putting the right people in the right roles and the right experts. And so learning that, and kind of in a way, you know, that applies to life too. But man, like with 3 kids, we've had balance is hard. Yeah. It's really hard. Matt and I have like had to really lean into like systems, and I will say Madison is the most organized. Like he makes a spreadsheet over everything. It drives me crazy because I'm not that way. But we have Sunday night meetings at 8:00 after the kids go down.
Good for you.
And we look at
organization.
The week ahead.
Wow.
Well, this is all Madison, but it actually has been. We didn't do this with 1 kid, but now that we have 3 and we have a startup, and you know he wants to go do a few social things here and there, and then I want to do that. Like, we have to put it on a calendar. We live and breathe by calendar. I don't see how people with 3 or more, or even 2 kids don't, especially when they get to the ages where like Navy has swim, she has soccer, she has this, she has that.
Yeah, I just got my life together. Now you guys are going to be bringing your stuff in. Oh no.
And that's only going to get more and more. And so Sunday nights for 1 hour, 8 to 9, kids are in bed. We go through the calendar of what's coming that next week. And if it doesn't go on the calendar, it's not happening. Yeah. Like this just happened last week where I was like, hey, I'm going to get, you know, do something with some girlfriends, and he was like, no, I mine's on the calendar. Mine's happening. And I'm really terrible at doing that because he's more type A. But so that's, I mean, it sounds like kind of simple and easy, but that has helped us as a team, like us being a unit, us reviewing, and like just getting on the same page of what the week holds. Because every week right now with 3 kids and a 4th being a startup, and then another business and partnerships, and it's just, it's packed. And in order for us to be intentional about having the moments, I love to ride horses. That's the only thing that keeps me balanced. That's the only thing that keeps me sane right now, is getting that hour a week we just have to operate that way,
Yes.
because Matt has those things too. And really that's a big part of motherhood and running a business is being able to take a step away and go do things like that, which I didn't do that till about a year ago.
It's great advice.
But I think life has gotten too full now with having
Great
a
advice.
startup and having 3 kids. You have to take, I didn't know what self-care looked like till I became a mom.
Yeah.
Motherhood taught me self-care, and taking a step back and doing something for yourself just to clear your head. It helps me be a better business owner and mom.
Yeah, well
It's hard.
said. And that's great takeaways too. We do Monday meetings, and our Monday meetings last sometimes 6 hours, but I mean, we are running 2 large scale businesses, and then plus all of my brand. So it's like 3 full businesses. And right now we've got, 4.5, 5 people, but we need probably 10, but we
Yeah.
like having a small team. But, you get to the point where it's like, whoa, we need more people, but also we live and breathe by those Monday meetings and that calendar. And I think that's really great advice. Like, intentionality can go so far when you're running 100 miles an hour, and just being, sitting down with your spouse, even if your spouse thinks opposite, has an opposite brain than you, and seeing if you can get them to sit down with you for 30 minutes and being like, hey, here's what we have going up.
It's
Coming up.
huge. It's huge. It's how we operate now. We kind of live and breathe
Yeah.
by those meetings.
Okay, so this is a question that I think that we touched on. So I just want you to touch on this one more time. So I think that in your book, I can still remember reading the story about how you were getting ready to get married and getting ready to walk down the aisle, and you were just this little child, and you had a gut feeling that it wasn't right.
This is my first marriage. Yeah, not the second one.
Not the second. Sorry,
First
Madison.
marriage. I was 22.
Yeah. So I guess you've learned some lessons in trusting your gut, because you didn't always trust your gut. Can you talk a little bit about how you've learned to trust your gut, and maybe
Yes.
why you didn't back then?
Yeah, and sometimes even today, like after kind of going through multiple experiences like that, my head leads, and then it's a battle. So I wouldn't say it's like you have a few experiences like that and you never struggle with it again. But I think it depends on. I think our body holds score. Our body holds count. Like physically, whenever I can't decide what I'm doing, what's the right decision, if I go this way or that way, I think just taking a beat back, even if it's just for 3 hours, 24 hours, listening to your body. It sounds a little like, and I have
I hate the body stuff, and I need to pay attention to the body
I have
stuff.
a hard time operating that way, because I want to go fast, I want to go furious, and I want to be able to lead in that way. But what's actually more powerful is being able to listen, not just to those around you, but like to your body. And I think our body, there's a lot of like physical energy and power in that. It's something I want to get more into and have more time to read about and to learn about. But that it's always that physical intuition, the gut, like you feel it deep in the deep depth, that is the answer that gives you that answer. And I felt that so clearly the day I was walking down the aisle in that small town and 350 people in that small church. And, but that experience I'm super thankful for. I mean, God, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be who I am today had I not gone through that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the things that set us back, our failures, are so important, because that's really what shapes us. That's what teaches. That's how we learn. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's being able to just take a step back and listen.
And then being brave enough to pivot when you hear your gut, you hear your heart versus your head loud and clear. Everything on your wedding, everybody loved your husband. He was a great guy. He's a surgeon. All of the facts lined up, and I'm sure he's a great person. But your heart was saying something different. And it's just like, eventually your heart was telling you to pivot in a way, and you did pivot. And I think that the pivot is, unfortunately, something that a lot of people don't quite get to or complete.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard. I had no one on my team when I was making that decision.
Yeah, because your family loved
Then there was
him, and
nothing like, there wasn't infidelity. There wasn't any big things wrong, especially outwardly facing. I mean, there was a lot there, but I think that everyone looked at me like I was crazy. And But I felt that so strongly and so deeply that I kind of put my head down and I kept telling my mom, I know this is the right thing. I know this is the right thing for me. And you just really have to, it's a very courageous, and it really, you know, you find out what you're made out of when you go through something like that. I wrote a lot. I journaled a lot. That was what kind of gave me clarity and grounded me, was writing. Yeah. I think you got to figure out, and running too. I think you have to figure out, as you're going through the pivot, you have to have moments of release. And for me, to kind of get through those highly emotional, difficult times, where writing and running, and that can look different for everyone. Maybe Great it's advice. A mentor, maybe it's a, you Great know, advice. It's a friend that you can just be really honest with. For me at that time, I didn't really have anyone in my life. I met my best friends like 5 years ago. I felt like my best friends in life that I know that I will be with till I die came later in life. And I think whatever that outlet is, it's important to really lean into that.
Yeah, for sure. And like another pivot that I have read and that I've heard you talk about on podcasts is your birth story. And I want to talk about this because I think a lot of women have an idea of how they want their birth to go. And then it goes another way. Hey, my sister-in-law is sitting here right now, and she had the same thing happen to her. And it's like, you know, that is something that you had to pivot your thinking. But then in that pivot, like your whole brand, Nēmah, was born, I feel like. So talk a little bit about your birth story with Navy. You really wanted this natural birth. It is not how it went.
Yeah. No, I was going in with like, no epidural. I'm going to
Good for
birth
you.
in the tub. I had a lot of, leaving nursing school, my thesis leaving, the paper I wrote was all about the effects of epidural and natural birth.
What?
And I was committed. I was so excited to have this experience. And but I was going to be in a hospital. I wasn't like, I didn't want to do the home birth. I still wanted to be in a hospital, but I had a lot of things that were supposed to happen. I had my plan. And the biggest thing motherhood has taught me is you have to release that control, because you really don't have control in that moment. I had a great pregnancy. It was kind of a breeze, and I was so thankful for that. And I just kind of thought I would walk into having this kid and, per the plan. And I had an emergency C-section. I had 10 people in the room. It went south like that. And I couldn't even get my jewelry off quick enough. And Navy was out within 15 minutes later. Wow. And it all happened so fast. I didn't know what had happened. And I had so many drugs in the OR that I got out, and the first really 48 hours of that were just a blur. But the one thing I've ever wanted in life is to be a mom. I think my passion for wanting to take care of people as a nurse kind of came from that just desire of motherhood. And I felt like Christmas, but I couldn't hardly remember any of it. And I was just so out of it. But I remember getting home. It was our third night home, and I was getting into bed, crawling into bed with this massive wound, and, finally really feeling the pain after all of those meds that had left. And I just started weeping. And Matt's seen me cry maybe 5 times in life. I'm just not, I have those emotional moments, but it doesn't usually come through tears. And I just was uncontrollably crying, and I felt such guilt and shame that I was holding on to, for feeling almost like I'd failed her. It didn't go as planned. And man, there's so many lessons I've learned in that, in the aftermath of that, after that, that first year of becoming a mother, that motherhood is really about relinquishing that control. And there's so many things that you can put in place, but at the end of the day, we can't control everything. Yeah. And that was really the start of that journey for me. Yeah. And I should have felt proud. I should have felt, proud of myself that I, but, I didn't. So
That's
much
the
of that.
reality. And I admire you for the vulnerability in telling that story. Because a lot of women go in with a birth plan and it goes a different way, and they just kind of brush it under the rug. But there are so many emotions.
And I was ready to just keep on going, leap into motherhood. And it was as if, again, my body was telling me, no, you're going to deal with this. It didn't go as planned. And you can have the moment. And this is the first step into realizing that motherhood isn't always about planning every detail
Yeah.
out. We have to release that control. And so that was the first lesson for me in that.
Okay, and then you have this C-section scar.
Yeah, so I had the C-section scar. Didn't
So
know
a
what to do with
reminder of
it.
it every single day.
I know, looking at it, and I mean, I just never, and that's kind of the funny part that I laugh at myself now. Like, I never thought I would have a C-section scar, and now I've had 3. But I was shocked when I went to find, the products for it. I could not believe the disparity of like, where's my scar cream? And okay, so where's the clean one? Where's the one that has all the science? Because anytime with skincare, I'm reading about the ingredients. I'm reading about the science. I think the nursing side of why I got into that really gives me that passion. And I was reading and looking for that, and I couldn't find it. And it was like, okay, the one off at Ulta, but it was like, I was like, wait, what is this? This looks like my grandfather used it. I want something that like is beautiful, and the experience of using it feels elevated. And I have that with Merit and Tata Harper and Drunk Elephant. The options are endless, but I just couldn't believe that mothers during the most vulnerable period, and also the most transformational period, and also the most drastic shift in buying habits, that we are so discerning of those ingredients, of what we're putting on our skin and our baby's skin, that didn't exist. And so, man, when that clicked for me, because I'd kind of experienced that with stretch cream in pregnancy, and then the scar was really just the second layer of that. I looked at Madison and I was like, this is what I'm doing. I finally know what I want to do with the line, because I knew I wanted my own product line. I actually thought it was going to be apparel. And that moment for me, it was like my journey with nursing, this digital world now, it just all connected in that moment of, okay, this is how I can take care of moms and hopefully bring a product that moms can trust.
Yeah. And I mean, now the Kardashians are using it. It's in their babies' bags. And like every time I like see something come up on social media, I'm like, oh my gosh, Kourtney Kardashian packed Nēmah in her baby bag. Like,
and she just keeps talking about it. And I'm like, what?
It's not like a partnership. It's just like,
it's not a partnership.
So when I started using it, like I got Nēmah because I was like, well, I'm friends with Mary, and like I'm going to support her by using her product. And then like, you already know this, I loved that stretch
You've
mark
been
cream.
one of our biggest champions of that stretch mark cream.
But
we just kept giving you tubes of it.
I know, because I was like, Mary, running out. I mean, I would get 3 at a time. Because when I was pregnant with Sunday, I was like, if I had to say one product that, like, I was so bummed that I didn't have the first 2 pregnancies that I have now, it was the Nēmah stretch mark cream. And
That's
I'm
amazing.
not just saying that because you're sitting here, or because you're my friend, or because any other fact, that I absolutely love.
No, that makes me so happy.
Product.
I mean, that was like the mission: support women, clean
love
products.
That product.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
I love that product. And here's the thing, okay? I appreciate people that are all organic and all clean. I'm not 100% all organic and all clean. Maybe one day. I don't know. We'll see. Every once in a while, they're like, hey, this chemical's going to work a little bit better for you. I'm like, okay, give me the chemical. But I appreciate that. But if there's a time in my life where I do want the clean stuff, especially if I'm rubbing it on my stomach, there is a baby in there. That is the baby's house. It is that time.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
And
clean
that
ingredients.
Scar cream works like it is. It is a really killer product. Even like the nipple
and lip balm. I mean, I use it every day. It's like it's really an ointment that is healing wherever. Elbows, kids' cheeks. Like,
oh, I know. I use it everywhere.
We develop in the EU, and man, we're so lucky to work with this incredible manufacturer there that all they care about. I mean, the EU, the standards are higher, unlike here. And that was the mission of the brand.
Yeah.
Clean ingredients, science-backed, active ingredients. And so we found that over there, and we're just lucky to have gotten to work with them to create these products.
It is really a killer line, and I love the packaging, and I love the mission, and I love the imagery, and I love the branding. It's just all the parts of you and the things that you're good at just came to the surface with this brand. And I think that this is part of your legacy is leaving a legacy for mothers. I love it that it was born of a pivot, because it's so much encompassing of your story and the control piece of your story. And the losing control. And then, like, isn't it so funny the things that we go through in life, but how they really work for us?
I know. It's those failures. It's the like when you're in the trenches, that is shaping you for whatever's next, and that's so valuable. And like the more we can lean into that, as hard as it is, the better.
Yeah. What is the legacy of Happily Gray?
Happily Gray was born out of, yes, it's been a store, and there's been capsule collections and those sort of things, but it's really the whole thing that inspired it was individuality and leaning into whoever you are and whatever inspires you and staying true to that, and just feeling empowered by that. I want that for my daughter, and that was where that passion lied for me. So I hope that women find community and just whoever they are. And like you said earlier at the beginning of this podcast, like not being afraid to just lean into that. Like we don't all want to look the same. Like wear your cowboy boots.
Forget that. You know, at times
I know
in our
you
life.
forget it, but that's what makes it beautiful. And that's also what makes community so beautiful, where we can learn. I don't want to be best friends with everyone that's like me. I want to be friends with people that are different from me so we can learn from each other, and our community looks colorful in different ways. And I think, you know, that's always been the heart of Happily Gray, of wanting to bring together that community. And it's about a feeling and a mood and just really honoring that.
Okay. If you could, this is the last question. If you could put any message on a billboard for people to see while they're driving down the interstate,
Ooh.
what would that be?
Gosh, this is honestly, it was probably what I tattooed on I don't have a lot of tattoos, but probably this. B.
I didn't know you had that
B,
tattoo.
period. I got this during my divorce. And a lot of people see it and they think it means like, be you, be who you are. But it really means to be present in the moment in whatever's happening now, whether it's good, whether it's bad. And at that point in my life, I felt like I was in the trenches. I was in the trenches. And I had this like just message that kept coming back to me of just be here, go through this, lean into this, explore this. And yeah, I loved it so much. I tattooed it on my body, which my parents hated.
Don't you do it. That's what a reminder to yourself, to people. I mean, you can see it. You know?
Yeah, I put it here specifically, and I faced it towards me because that was really the whole point. I'm not, I'm not infatuated with tattoos. It was more of like, I want to know in every season of life, I really want to remember being present, and whether it's good or whether it's bad, just really honoring that time.
What a great podcast. It was awesome to be with you, Mary Lawless Lee.
I love you. I'm inspired by you. I literally like your energy and your light and your vulnerability. Like it's inspiring to other women. It's infectious and it's inspiring, and like just wish that we had more time.
I know.
Always wish we had more time together.
I know. We say that every time we're around each other, don't we? We got to make some more time.
I know.
Put it in your calendar.
Our Sunday meetings. We got to get our families together. Let these kiddos.
I know. I want to come and see that new house. This was an incredible conversation. Such a great reminder of trusting your gut, overcoming not failures, but those trench moments in our life, of reminding ourselves to just be present in our lives. So many amazing things that we've talked about today. And I just really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
I will link everything, Mary Lawless Lee. You can find her on Instagram, on your website. I'm going to link Nema in particular. Even if you are not about to have a baby, if you know someone that's about to have a baby, this is just the most incredible gift.
Our pregnancy set's our best-selling set because it's kind of a one and done. It's the stretch and the oil, and it's everything you need. Layer both of them on. A lot of our customers are buying it for other people.
Yes, and the shampoo and body wash that I use for my children, because now you have the children's line, and I love the packaging. I just love it.
They're so cute.
Well, thank you so much. This was an
you.
amazing conversation, and thank you guys for listening and just kind of being a fly on the wall with me and my friend Mary's conversation about all things life and motherhood and business. And I hope that this conversation helped you somewhat live fully in your own life today. I will link everything in the show notes, and thank you so much for listening. Tune in next week for more.